1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on nccradio.org. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. This program is repeated Sunday evenings at 11 p.m. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Pearl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This all depends on when you are listening. Oh my goodness, I nearly forgot. It's Happy Hanukkah. So hello on the radio, hello online, and hello to the world. I must tell you that I began my Hanukkah celebration on Thursday evening outside on the steps of NYU Langone Hospital right here in Mineola, where I am blessed to be the resident rabbi. And we had an amazing celebration as we kicked off the great holiday of Hanukkah. So I'd like to share with you some of the thoughts that were shared then, and then go into our general idea of the importance of this holiday in so many different ways. And before I forget, my friends, tonight at 7 p.m., 7 to 10 p.m. is our ChanukkahTelethon.com. You can visit ChanukkahTelethon.com and get all the information. It's on the JBS, Jewish Broadcasting Services, that's channel 138. It's also on News 12 Plus on their great channel and online, and get all the information on ChanukkahTelethon.com. That's the importance of the celebration that we look forward to this evening. So where do we begin? Of course, I thought it was very appropriate that the holiday of Hanukkah began on the eve of December the 7th. And why do you think it was important? Because, I'm sure you're aware that this date is Pearl Harbor Day. It honors the 2,403 Americans who were killed when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941. So, as we began our celebration of Hanukkah, let us all first pause to reflect upon the supreme sacrifice made by so many Americans at Pearl Harbor and during the grim struggle that followed. Let us reaffirm our dedication to the principles of freedom and justice, which of course is the cornerstones of our nation. Again, as we celebrate, we're now into the third day. Tonight we'll be lighting the fourth candle. Hanukkah emphasizes that each and every individual has the unique power to illuminate the entire world. It reminds us, too, that illumination begins at home, within ourselves and our families. The responsibility comes not only when it is simple or easy, but when it seems most difficult. Therefore, the lights of Chanukah Menorah are kindled when the sun has set and the darkness covers the earth. That's when the light and the energy of a candle has the greatest impact. And as we all know, each night of Hanukkah we light one more candle than the night before. Each night the world's a little brighter. The menorah reminds us that we should always aspire to increase in positive things that we do. If we did one good deed yesterday, well, let's do two today. The menorah represents freedom from tyranny and oppression and barbarism, and the freedom for all people to express their own faith as they see fit. When it's lit in a public place, as indeed we did, we started out there right in front of the hospital, the menorah represents the principles of equality and religious freedom upon which our country is founded. It is a wonderful symbol of religious diversity that is the hallmark of this great nation. So, here's another thought as we go through this in a very, very special way, because later on in our program, we're going to interview a very, very important doctor, Dr. Janice Cohn, who will speak about an amazing book that she wrote that relates so much to the importance that all of us, doesn't matter who we are, can participate in spreading the light of Hanukkah. But keep in mind, light has a source, be it a candle or a light bulb or the sun. Either way, the light must be sustained by another substance, whether it's oil or electricity. our spiritual light, too, needs to be sustained. We cannot expect the light to go on forever unless we keep it going. This light is sustained by study, meditation, introspection, and our increased act of goodness and kindness with our fellow mankind. So as I say, as we begin our program today, let's keep the light shining. Let's keep that light shining. Let's keep that light shining. And of course, allow me again to make sure you hear it very clearly. Happy Chanukah to everyone. Let's share a few Chanukah facts. The root of the word Chanukah comes from the word dedication. The name Chanukah celebrates the Jewish people rededicating the temple after their miraculous victory. It happened on the 25th day of the Jewish month of Kislev. Now, the word Chanukah can be broken into 3 Hebrew words, Chanu, Chof, He, which means they rested from fighting on the 25th. The 25th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev is when they re-entered the Holy Temple. Now, being subjected to Greek rule at that time, the Jewish people could not celebrate the 8 days of the holiday of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres. Upon rededicating the temple, they celebrated the missed Sukkot festival for 8 days. Many years before the miracle of Hanukkah, in the wilderness after leaving Egypt, again on the 25th day of Kislev, in the year 1312 BCE, the Jewish people completed the construction of the tabernacles. When the Jewish people rebuilt the second temple in Jerusalem in the year 353 BCE, after their return from the Babylonian exile, they constructed the foundation of the sanctuary on the 24th of Kislev. That evening, the night of the 25th of Kislev, they celebrated. Hanukkah was established long after the Torah was given. Nevertheless, there's an allusion, actually, to the Festival of Lights in the Torah itself. If you used to count up the 25th word in the Torah, open up a book of Genesis, and in the Hebrew count up first, Bereshis, Bar Elohim, you will find the 25th word in the Bible, in the Torah, is the word Or, which means light. And that is an allusion to the light that we celebrate on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. Now, did you know that the first night of Hanukkah can never fall on a Monday night? And the 5th candle cannot fall on a Shabbat. The Kabbalah, that's Jewish mysticism, teaches that the 7 days of creation express attributes of both the divine as well as the human personality. What are these expressions, these attributes? Chesed, kindness. We all have kindness. We all have an aspect and attribute of gevura, restraint. We all incorporate a level of beauty, tiferes. We all have a spark of victory, netzach, hod, which is glory, humility, and yesod, foundation, and finally malchus is royalty. So too are the first 7 days of Hanukkah. However, unlike the natural order of the week, Hanukkah is 8 days, for the Hanukkah lights imbue the world with the miraculous illumination of the supernatural experience that will reach its full realization when the coming of Mashiach. Now, in addition to lighting the menorah at home, many communities have adopted a rich and variety of customs in honor of this holiday. Each of them has its own symbolisms and meaning. So, let me just go through them. Some of the Hanukkah customs traditional in the Jewish homes. Number 1 is to eat food made with oil. The custom is to consume foods with oil. Again, to commemorate the miracle of the menorah oil, going back many centuries. Most notably, Jewish communities have enjoyed donuts, sufganiyot, and potato pancakes, latkes. One of the earliest American Jewish books, Aunt Babette's cookbook, Foreign and Domestic Recipes for the Household, that was published in Cincinnati in 1889, I remember it like yesterday, includes, guess what, a latke recipe. Another important Jewish custom in Hanukkah is to not only is there an obligation to kindle the menorah in the home, it's also customary, however, to light the menorah in the synagogue each evening of the Hanukkah. This practice began when repressive regimes made it difficult to light the candles outside of their homes. So, unable to publicize the miracle from home, the Jewish community began kindling the menorah in the synagogue, in addition to the ones inside their homes, so that the entire community could witness and participate in the commemoration, a modicum, so to speak, of publicity. Today, it is common for public lightings to take place in public areas across Long Island. For example, there's menorah lightings on public property, in parks. You will travel along Hempstead Turnpike, you will see a beautiful menorah right at the Coliseum, and many, many locations, and at synagogues there are menorah lightings each evening. We look forward to having our public menorah lighting on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. at Chabad Mineola. Another important custom is called Chanukah Geld. This is a notable Hanukkah custom for parents and other relatives to give children gifts of money. One explanation for this custom points to the name Chanukah itself, which is the Hebrew language comes from the Hebrew word chinuch, Chanukah, from chinuch, which means education. After being unable to teach their children Torah during that period of oppressive occupation, which is what the background of Hanukkah is, the Jewish community who lived through the Hanukkah story had to begin the education process anew for their children. So giving gifts of money was a way to incentivize these renewed Torah studies. And by the way, just make sure not only to give your children, but also give your spouse as well. Besides the allowances, besides all the other things, it's so important to give Chanukah Geld to your spouse. So, ladies and gentlemen, now is the time. Another custom, of course, I'm sure you're thinking about this, is the word dreidel. It's also very much part of this holiday, dreidel. A number of 17th century sources indicate that the European Jews would play games involving a dice on Hanukkah. In time, the dreidel, a squared spinning toy, became the norm. On the sides of this spinning toy are the letters Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin, written on its four sides. Rabbi Yitzchok Radvil writes that in his day it was widely understood that these letters were the acronym for Nes Gadol Hoya Sham. A great miracle happened there. And the Hanukkah miracles, of course, that is pointed to transpired in the land of Israel. But in Israel itself, the same dreidel has different letters. Nes Gadol Hoya Poi. A great miracle happened here. So what it says, Shin, in the American dreidel, Israel has a pay to indicate that a miracle happened right there and then. What about the dairy foods? So in the context of the Hanukkah story, according to a number of sources, Yehudit, a Jewish woman of great valor, used cheese to single-handedly secure victory for the Jewish army. She gained access to an enemy commander's quarters under the pretense of friendship and served him cheese, which of course made him very thirsty and eager to drink her wine. Once he was inebriated, he had fallen asleep, she took care of business, she neutralized him, and to commemorate this victory and due to his courage, we consume dairy foods on Hanukkah. Now, I would like to, in a sense, address at this moment our response to darkness. We each have a front line where we battle the darkness of terror. Our civilian response is also crucial for victory because debilitating sadness and anxiety only aids our enemies. When we react by intensifying our light and efforts, shifting our focus to a more profound sense of purpose, this demonstrates that evil cannot prevail and light wins over darkness. Throughout the Jewish history, our choosing to amplify light, despite loss, despite terrorism or hatred, is our coping method and victory. In dark times, we don't diminish our light, we increase it. Historically, the model for this approach is Miriam, the prophetess, when her parents, Adam and Amram and Yocheved, Miriam, we're talking about the sister of Moses, her parents, called Amram and Yocheved, divorced. Why? Due to Pharaoh's decree, because he made this terrible decree to kill all the male infants. So Miriam challenged her parents, her father, highlighting that his response also impacted females. If he divorced, there would be no girls. So counterintuitively, Miriam argued for not diminishing but multiplying even in times of darkness. This strategy worked, and her little brother, Moses, was born. Similarly, survivors like Elie Wiesel couldn't imagine bringing children into such a dark world. The Rabbi urged him to date and marry, to multiply and not diminish, emphasizing the importance of building a Jewish home and a family as a powerful act of defiance. Jewish expansion is the key to defying and defeating those who seek to destroy us. We all play a role in today's battle of light over darkness. We're all soldiers of light. As in any conflict, the troops' enthusiasm is critical, and we need all of our moral to be high. So when navigating any difficulty, our confidence and mood is critical for success. The Hasidic masters take one step further by quoting a psalm that says, Hashem tzilcha, God is your shadow, explaining that God follows your lead like a shadow. So when you smile and increase your light, God smiles back with divine light. That's why our attitude and our actions matter. Our confidence and positivity at home or at the office impacts the divine response and assists in our national victory. And that is what we are celebrating throughout this week of Chanukah. Now, there's 8 nights, and it's become more and more the custom is to sit. Important. It's to sit by the menorah, not just to light it and walk away, but to sit there for half an hour. And as in the name of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, he once told his followers, his Hasidim, we should listen to the Chanukah lights, listen to what they are telling us. As you kindle your menorah each night and gaze at the flickering flames, spend a few moments listening to the lessons that they tell. And I want to share with you some of the messages that are being communicated by the lights. And it comes from the teachings of the 7th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, and to encourage us to meditate and to have or share a word of Torah, a word of meaning, of inspiration each night at the menorah lighting. So I want to share with you what we did on the first night, the second night, and the third night. The first night, as we sat around our menorah lighting, which, thank God, is my wife and myself, is our wedding anniversary. We got married on the first night of Chanukah. And I shared the following. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. In our efforts to fill the menorah with light, we begin this evening with something small, a single flame. At the same time, even while we only light 1 candle tonight, it is kindled on a menorah with 7 empty cups. As important it is to start small and grow incrementally, it is also important to have the vision of where you want to go. So we discussed, what goals do we want to achieve? What is the first step that we can take to reach them? On the second night, which was on Friday night, we had, of course, we kindled two sets of candles. We had the Shabbos candles and the Hanukkah candles. Of course, we lit the Hanukkah candles first. Now, here's the question. If there's a lack of funds that forces us to choose between them, you only have enough money for one set of lights, either the Shabbos candles or the Hanukkah candles. The Talmud teaches us that the Shabbat candles take precedence. Why? Because their purpose is to add peace in the home. It is not that the Shabbos candles are more important, but they incorporate the theme of menorah, and Judaism as a whole, too. Judaism's highest goal, which is reflected in the menorah, is peace. Peace between ourselves and the world around us, between evil and good, between the world and its creator. So in a certain respect, the Shabbos candles are the ultimate representation of the Hanukkah message. And we discussed for quite a while in what way does Judaism promote peace in the world, and how each of us can further this message. On the third night, which was last night, what did we share? The menorah is traditionally lit outside of our homes or at the entrance. On Hanukkah, we learn that it's not enough to have light within, but we must share it with the world. It's not enough to be educated, inspired, and elevated. We must educate others, inspire someone else, uplift the environment all around us. We each have a powerful light to shine on the world and make it a brighter place. So, once again, the conversation was, what Jewish value or message do we have that we can share with others, and how we can share it? And I must tell you, talk about that, I'm again sharing with my wonderful audience some good news. I have put together a very special presentation, and I'm looking for invitations to come and speak to your Rotary group, to your women's group, to any kind of group you have. It's called Be a Mensch Without a Bench, a non-judgmental view of mankind. So despite the difficult times, I want to tell you, dear friends, you heard it from me, I have not lost my faith in humanity. And because of that, I've launched my Shared Society initiative, Be a Mensch Without a Bench. This is a very upbeat presentation on the glimmers of hope that empower a way of thinking and being in this world. To engage life proactively, with openness, with care and clarity through the winding paths of life. And if anybody would like to invite us to make no money, there's no fundraising, nothing, just give me a call at 516-739-3636 or drop me an email, and I'll be happy to come to your group at your convenience. Now, again, Hanukkah. To see the Hanukkah miracle, look into the mirror. Hanukkah celebrates our ancestors' wondrous victory over the enemies and the miraculous event where a one-day oil supply lasted 8 days in the temple menorah. The Talmud suggests there might be an additional miracle hidden within the story. And the idea goes like this. Our enemies had declared a physical and spiritual war on the holiness to replace Judaism with Hellenism. That's why they placed, unfortunately, a pig on the altar and contaminated the menorah's oil supply. Yet somehow they missed one small jar of oil. This tiny jar of oil was the catalyst for the incredible 8-day miracle of Hanukkah. So, what is this? What is this small, elusive jar of oil that remains untouchable? And the Hasidic masters compare it to the divine spark within each of us. It represents our unbreakable faith. The tiny jar of oil is that untouchable part of our inner selves that remains pure and immune to negativity. The Hasidic masters see this oil as the true miracle, the true Chanukah miracle. Chanukah's little jar of oil is a metaphor for the indomitable faith and the spirit of the Jewish people that persists despite numerous challenges, adversities, and continues to be a light among the nations. So think of the enduring jar of oil that symbolizes our nature-defying divine essence and our unyielding faith that keeps on burning continuously. Now, as we go through the week, the 8 days of Hanukkah, again, there are so many messages and so many thoughts and what we can do throughout this week, because we all know that we have a message of light to offer society. The Talmud tells us it's a mitzvah to place one's Hanukkah lights outside of the entrance of your home. And a little later on, we're going to hear some fascinating history that takes us back to 1943 to 1993 and to our current time, 2023, about the importance of everyone. Really inviting everybody, Jew and Gentile alike, everybody out there, to place a menorah in your window, the entrance to your home, in the window. So if you live on an upper floor, place it at the window, which is closest to the street. Why? Because all of us, I don't care who we are, we all have the ability to share a message of light to society. And sometimes we actually hesitate to broadcast that message, to be that source of light. So during the week of Hanukkah, I'm always thinking, how might we overcome that hesitation and to be that beautiful example of light? Moving on the same idea, on the messages of light, when we light the menorah, we have a hymn. It's called a Hanukkah hymn, Hanukkah song, and it translates like this. We kindle those lights for the salvation, the miracles, the wonders that you perform for our ancestors in those days at this time, through your holy priests. Throughout the 8 days of Hanukkah, these lights are sacred. We're not permitted to make use of them, only to gaze at them. So we can't sit down and start reading a book or a Torah book or anything at the lights. They're there just to look at, to gaze, and to learn from, to hear what their message is. So I'm asking everybody today, please, when you gaze at the lights of the menorah in your home, or you see in someone else's home, what message do you hear? What do you see when you see a menorah? What does it remind us of? How does it uplift us? Another important thing is there's something unique about the light of the menorah that I would suggest it defies dilution. The Medrash tells us, experiment and you will discover that you can dilute liquids by mixing alien liquids with the original. Mix up other kinds of liquids, fine. But there's something about oil. Oil is unique. Because whatever liquid you pour into it with the oil will remain pure and will rise to the surface. So oil, which is the preferred fuel for the menorah's lights, defies this dilution. So think about it. Think about this seriously. What spiritual insight might this phenomenon hold for us? What do we have that is indestructible, that defies any breakup or dilution? Now, another important thing is the undiminishing light. You know, a mitzvah is a candle. In the book of Proverbs, it emphasizes this point. Kiner mitzvah. A mitzvah is like a candle. When we are conflicted, wishing to perform a mitzvah, but dreading its cost in time or resources, we should recall that the Torah compares a mitzvah to a candle. A single candle can ignite thousands of others, but its own light remains undiminished. Similarly, when we perform good deeds, we will not find ourselves being diminished in any way. So the effort, the resources, the financial, cost sometimes on performing a mitzvah, you'll always find it coming back. Let's think, which good deeds do we consider particularly susceptible to this concern, where we are sometimes hesitant to spend the extra time and effort and resources to perform a mitzvah? Never feel that way. And that lesson is actually taken from the highest candle on the menorah, on the Chanukah. The highest one, the tallest one, is called the shamash. That's the candle that's used to light all the others. We don't make a blessing over this tall menorah, this tall candle. It's held in our hands, and we carefully go to the first, the second, the third, each night. And look what happens. This candle ends up sitting on the highest position. One should never be afraid to add light and to contribute and make a difference, because as you're doing that, lighting others, you yourself are elevated on the interim. And it is always that wonderful elevated spirit that we all have when we can say we made a difference in someone else's life. And that's the lesson of the large candle on the menorah itself. It's used to light so many others, and yet it stays on top. Such important things for us to be thinking about on this holiday itself. There's an interesting question the commentators ask about Hanukkah. For 8 days we light lights, and each night we make the blessings over the miracles. Shas Nissen Lavasenu. But what was the miracle on the first night? That light should have lasted 1 day, lasted for 8. But that means that there was something miraculous about days 2 and 8. But nothing miraculous about the first day. So why we make a blessing on the first about the miracles? There wasn't enough for that for 1 day. Perhaps the miracle was this, that the Maccabees found 1 cruse of oil with its seal intact, undefiled, and there was no reason to suppose that anything would have survived the systematic desecration of the Syrian Greeks and their supporters, what they did to the temple. Yet the Maccabees searched and found that one jar. Why did they even search? Because they had faith that from the worst tragedy something would survive. The miracle of the first night was that of faith itself, the faith that something would remain with it, which they could use and to begin again. And so it's always been in our Jewish history. There were times when other people would have given up in despair after the destruction of the temple, or the massacres of the Crusades, or the Spanish Inquisition, or the pogroms, or the Holocaust, and what's happened recently on October the 7th, but somehow we don't just sit back and weep. They gathered what remained, rebuilt, and lit a light like no other in history. A light that tells us that the world of power of the human spirit to overcome every tragedy and refuse to accept any defeat. So from the days of Moses and the bush, remember the bush that burnt, was not consumed, to the days of the Maccabees with a single cruse of oil, Judaism has been, in a sense, humanity's ner tamid, an everlasting light that no power on the earth can extinguish. And of course, as we see it ongoing every single day of our lives. And that is, again, such an important aspect. There's one more command in Judaism to light lights. There's more, just the Hanukkah, right? There are 3 actually. The Shabbos candles, is the Havdalah candle after Saturday, and then there's the Hanukkah candles. The difference between them is that the Sabbath candles represents Shalom Bayis, as we mentioned, peace in the home. They're lit indoors. They are, if you like, Judaism's inner light, the light of the sanctity of marriage and the holiness of the home. The Hanukkah candles used to be lit outside the front door. It was only the fear of persecution in history that took the Hanukkah candles back inside. And in recent times, the Lubavitcher Rebbe introduced the custom of lighting giant menorahs in public places to bring back the original spirit of the day. Hanukkah candles are the light Judaism brings to the world when we are unafraid to announce our identity in public, to live by our principles, and, of course, for our freedom. As for the Havdalah candle, which is always made up of several wicks woven together, it represents the fusion of both, the inner light of Sabbath, joined to the outer light we make during the 6 days of the week when we go out into the world and live our faith in public. When we live where we should be in private, filling our homes with the light of holiness, the divine presence, when we live in public that way as well, we bring hope to others. And when we live both together, this brings light to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our program here this morning on this important holiday of Hanukkah, I again bring to you an important perspective that all of us should remember, that the menorah represents freedom from tyranny, oppression, and the fact that all people can express their faith as they see fit. And we're living in a time, ladies and gentlemen, where with so much hatred out there, that the public menorah and the holiday of Hanukkah is more important than ever. And we can no better respond to negativity that we encounter than to proudly gather together, and in even greater numbers than before, and to celebrate the light of the menorah in public. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Cohn, who has graciously taken time out from a very busy schedule to share with us an important insight and good work that she's doing that will help us appreciate what we're celebrating and how we can celebrate it and the impact of Hanukkah all over. Now, remember, the actual holiday itself, the Hanukkah story, began in the year 165 BCE, before the Common Era. And Dr. Cohn has successfully brought to our attention, to millions of people, a fascinating piece of the Hanukkah or the menorah history that actually ties together 1943 through 1993. And here we are at 2023. But I believe, Doctor, you have something very important through an important book that you have authored. So please tell us a little bit about the name of your book and what's the connection between 1943 and 1993.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Pearl. Thank you for having me. The name of the book is The Christmas Menorahs, How a Town Fought Hate. And the connection, which is very important, between 1943 and 1993, when these events happened in Billings, Montana, is profound, I believe. In 1943, the Denmark was occupied by the Nazis. And in October of 1943, the Danes managed to save virtually their entire Jewish population, unlike other countries in Europe at the time that were also occupied. There was a story that was, it actually is a bit apocryphal, although the truth is even more extraordinary. But there was a story that came out of that time of King Christian, who was the king of Denmark at that time. And the story goes that the Nazi commandant had ordered him to in turn order the Jews in Denmark, who until that time had not had to wear the Star of David, unlike in other occupied countries. And they told him, as the legend, it's kind of a legend, as the legend goes, that he would have to order the Jews to wear the Star of David. And he refused to do so. And in fact, the story continues, when he rode out of his palace for his daily horseback ride, he was wearing on his arm a Star of David, and asked all the Danes to do the same so that the Jews could not be identified. Now, that was an extraordinary story. Actually, I heard that story when I was a child. I didn't realize it wasn't quite the way things happened, but again, the actual truth is even more amazing. But the way that it relates to Billings, Montana, in 1993 is that Billings, Montana had been infiltrated by a group of skinheads and neo-Nazis. Now, I should give a little bit of background. Billings, Montana at that time had 80,000 residents. Out of those 80,000 residents, there were about 50 Jewish families. So many people in Billings had never even met a Jew. They would go about their business, and they might not have even met someone that was that practiced Judaism. And I'm going to kind of condense the story. When the skinheads and neo-Nazis targeted a number of the town's minorities, but when Hanukkah approached, they targeted the Jewish families, particularly those families that displayed menorahs in their windows. And rocks were thrown through windows that displayed menorahs. In one house, the home of the Schnitzer family, Isaac Schnitzer's menorah that he had displayed in the window of his bedroom, it was clearly a child's bedroom, had been smashed with a cinder block. The cinder block landed on his bed. Had he been in bed, he would have been seriously hurt, if not killed. If the menorah had candles rather than an electric menorah, of course, a great fire could have occurred. So the Jewish families had been advised, with the best of intentions, that they should not display their menorahs or their Hanukkah decorations because it was too dangerous to do so. And the families resisted, and they said, no, how would you feel if you were told that you had to take down your Christmas trees and Christmas decorations because it was too dangerous to show that you were Christians? So Margie McDonald, who at the time was the director of the Montana Association of Churches, had read about what the Jews were advised, what the Schnitzer family was advised in the paper, in the Billings Gazette. And she said, no, that's not the answer to have them take their menorahs down. We should show support to them. And she had remembered vaguely a story that she had heard about as a child about the Star of David that the Danes had all displayed. And she said, and she was looking for a dramatic way for the community to show support. This community was a very, very Christian community. And her idea was that they would put pictures of menorahs in the windows, even though it was dangerous at that point. And that's how the community could show support for the Jews. And as she said, it was not for the Jews that they did that. It was for their own community to make it a better place to live. And thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures of menorahs went up on churches and schools and people residences. And it was dangerous. Some people, yeah.
Absolutely. No, unbelievable. We're speaking with Dr. Janice Cohn, the author of the book called The Christmas Menorahs, How a Town Fought Hate, which recounts events that occurred in Billings, Montana in 1993, and how that a lesson in 1993 was taken from 1943 from the King of Denmark, and how everybody in the town displayed menorahs during that event. Now, let me ask you, Doctor, I want you to know that here on Long Island in Newsday, the biggest newspaper here on December the 5th, this past week, an amazing article was written by Randy F. Marshall, who is one of the members of the editorial aboard in Newsday. She wrote a wonderful article, Fight Anti-Semitism, Put a Menorah in Your Window. So your good work is now being felt across the country, across the communities. But let me ask you, why, Doctor, yourself, why were you interested in this subject? What made you come to write this book?
Well, I really think that it was destiny, actually. I'm a psychotherapist, and also I have written children's books before. But there was a series of anti-Semitic incidents in my town, and I was feeling very helpless. We all were. We were grappling with how to respond to that. And there was also a virulently anti-Semitic speaker that had spoken on a college campus, and this is very relevant today with what's happening on college campuses. And instead of the administration roundly condemning that, they took no stand. They were neutral because of the issue of free speech. Now, at the time, I was involved in organizing a conference, oddly enough, just when the speaker came to the campus, on the psychology of hate. And so I thought that the conference was needed more than ever, but for a number of reasons, the conference kind of fell apart. And I was feeling really angry. I was feeling helpless. And then 2 days later, I saw an article in the New York Times, and that was in February of 1994, that recounted what happened in Billings. It was a tiny little article, but it made a big impression on me, and I knew immediately that I wanted to write about it. And the children that are exposed to so many negative things today. Now, that was in 1993. The book has been reissued in an expanded edition. It's even more the case today. But in 1993, that was also the case. And so the newspaper article focused on the chief of police and how he had helped to rally the community. And so I thought I would call the police station. Well, apparently, many, many, many other people that had read that Times article had the same idea, because I think there is such a hunger for stories of goodness and courage these days. And so this is a true story. The switchboard was jammed. Nobody could get through, except for one person, which happened to be me. And nobody understands why, but I took it as a sign that I was meant to write that story. And Wayne Inman put me in touch with the Schnitzer family, and I was invited to come to Billings to do research to write the story. And may I just say this, because this is really a story about upstanders, about people that are doing something because it's the right thing to do, acting on the highest principle of loving others, treating others as ourselves. And so I talked with, I got to interview a number of children, and I was aware of how they were affected by this story, because all of them had had discussions with their families about should they put a picture of a menorah in the window or not. And, during the Holocaust, when so many researchers have tried to figure out what makes a rescuer as opposed to a bystander during the Holocaust. And one of the things that researchers have discovered, particularly Sam and Pearl Oliner did a book, The Altruistic Personality, that focused on that issue. And the most important thing they found was their role model. Whose people role models were determined how they would act during the Holocaust. And I was thinking all of these children had role models of their parents who were not Jewish, who were mainly Christian, and their teachers and their ministers taking a stand, and they would remember this. And that's what children, I believe, need to see. And that's why it's not important that people buy my book, but it is important that children, young people, know this story of what happened, of goodness and courage, and other true stories like it.
I must tell you, Doctor, that what you're saying is so inspiring to us and to all of us listening. On a personal note, what you're saying is so true. I am a second-generation Holocaust survivor. My father went through the whole business. He was chosen by Mengele to go to the slave labor. And after he got married and was blessed with a family, his dear wife and my mother and the children, I must tell you, after these many years, he did not leave 1 ounce of hatred with us about anybody. He never spoke against anybody throughout his life. And he had every, you could say, legitimate or kosher reason, because he saw it up front. So I appreciate very much this message that you have, and that everybody out there should be exactly to be a light. Where can anybody who would like to buy your book or read the book, where can we go for this?
You know, they can go on our website. May I give the
Sure,
name of
please,
the website?
please.
Which has a lot of information and also a number of different ways they could purchase the book. The website is actually the same name as the book, The Christmas Menorahs.
Beautiful. That's very easy for everyone to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. And now, because of we're getting ready for the next night of lighting the menorah, I want to encourage everybody out there to take this lesson of Dr. Janice Cohn to seriously, and if you have not, to put a menorah or a picture of a menorah in your window and let the world know that we stand on the side of light, because Chanukah emphasizes that each and every individual has the unique power to illuminate the entire world. Every human being created by God, created in the image of God, means that we have to bring godliness to this world. It reminds us that illumination begins at home, our own homes and our own families, and of course the impact on the community around us. So in leaving, what would be your message to all of us here listening?
The message, I think, is the power of goodness and courage and how it can reverberate through time. And goodness begets goodness, because the courageous act of the Danes, and by the way, in the new edition of the book, there is a lot of information about the true story of how the Danes saved virtually their entire population, as well as a lot of other background information. But that the events in a country in Europe, across the ocean, can reverberate and inspire people 50 years later in a Western American town. It shows that these acts reverberate and continue to reverberate and continue to inspire.
Doctor, can you share with us, talk about the impact of, how did the impact of October the 7th, the barbaric events that happened in the south of Israel, did that impact you?
Well, it impacted me, of course, very much. And as we were discussing before the recording began, I'm a secular Jew. So I did not grow up going to Hebrew school, although my family did go to synagogue on major holidays. But as I grew up, I did not think of myself as a major part of my identity as being Jewish. If someone had asked me to describe who I was, I would describe other things, but not that. Since that time, and this was really a surprise to me, it awakened feelings that I never knew I had about my own Jewish identity. And as I told you, Rabbi Pearl, for the first time in many years, I actually went to synagogue because I felt that I needed to be surrounded by other Jews, other people with the same identity and the same feeling. And I began remembering things from my childhood that were, connected with my Jewishness that actually I had completely forgotten. So it's had a profound effect upon me.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm sure everybody is aware that even as we light candles throughout the 8 days of Hanukkah and brings light, there is an important lighting of candles every Friday night. It's called the lighting of the Shabbos candles. In fact, in the Jewish tradition, we bookend the Sabbath with light. Friday night, the women light candles. If a person's married, they light at least 2 candles. If they're single, they light 1. And at the end of the Sabbath, we have what's known as the Havdalah service, where typically the man lights the Havdalah candle. So really, we are actually, in our tradition, everything is about light. Recognizing the end of the week, Doctor, is concluded that we light the Shabbos candles, and we say to ourselves, I hope my whole week has produced, like the end result of all my work, whatever I may be doing, ends up with candles, with lights. And then we start the new week on Saturday night with the Havdalah service, which again says, I want to bring light into this world. But you are continuously bringing light into this world. And I encourage everybody, especially this coming Friday night, to make sure that those Shabbos candles are burning, and every Friday night to light them at times, and to take the lesson of Dr. Janice Cohn, who has authored this beautiful book called The Christmas Menorahs, How a Town Fought Hate, and all based on connecting an amazing lesson of 1943 to 1993. And here we are all together in 2023, and we are still continuing to bring light to the world in every single way. So again, I want to thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today.
May I say one other thing?
Of course, surely.
Because this is something that's actually, somebody said, a quote from someone that I thought was so relevant and beautiful that I put it literally on the cover of the new edition of the book. And it was a Christian, who was an editor at the time at the Billings Gazette, which is the town newspaper. And he had a beautiful quote. He said at one point, he said, just a tiny candle we lit. It wasn't much, but it was something. And, I'd like to end by saying, if every community, if every town just lit a tiny candle, imagine, the kind of country we would have.
1, 2, 3, 4.